What's going on, advocates? Welcome back to another edition of the Black Mental Health Podcast. I'm your host, Reg. Joined today with me is a coach, man. I got to go in and look back into your history and some of the things that you're doing. You're doing some amazing things, but I don't introduce anybody because I like to give full credentials out there, get your flowers, your roses, and let the people perk up and know why they're listening to you. So introduce yourself to the people.
I appreciate you, King. Appreciate you having me on, Reg. It's an honor and a privilege, bro. You're doing great things yourself. So I'm Jevon Wooden. I am a U.S. Army veteran, Bronze Star recipient. And first and foremost, I am a huge mental health advocate, being someone who suffers from PTSD, depression, and anxiety themselves. So that's near and dear to my heart. But as you mentioned, I am also a coach, focused on mindset and business. I help people overcome overwhelm and design a life they don't need a vacation from.
Oh man, that's why I love hearing the intros too, because it gives me a perception that the person has. Because once I seen what you were doing, I'm like, I wonder which one of those do you identify with most? We talked before off here about like father time and how important.
Yeah.
Which one of those means the most closest to your heart?
Which one? The intro parts?
Yeah, just anything about you that you have going on. Like,
Yeah.
which one do you like? I'm very protective of that one. That's one that's high on my list.
Oh yeah, I would say. I mean, really, the most important part is I didn't even say it was compassion. Being a compassionate person, I think that's the most important for me because that leads into everything else, man. Being able to serve with that empathy, serving from that understanding, listening to not respond but to understand other people's perspective and gaining that insight. I think that's the most important thing for me, man, because that's got me out of my struggles too.
And as much as you're willing to go into, you talk about being a mental health advocate, and what I always try to ask, like, what brought the person that I try to highlight it as a mental health moment. It was a moment where it was like, you know what, something ain't right, like I have to do something about it. And then like, what's the story behind you becoming an advocate?
Yeah, for sure. Great question, bro. So man, I'm like so many of us in the Black community, man. I had no idea about mental health stuff. We're honestly told to like push through. We're told to suck it up. We're told all these things, especially as a Black man, that it's weak to show vulnerability, to show your emotions, anything other than being assertive and all those other things. And I tried that. I tried that when I was younger, and it almost landed me in prison for 7 years, man. When I was 17, I faced those years because I had an assault and robbery charge. By the grace of God, the only thing that saved me was the fact that the victims never showed. So the prosecutors dropped the case, right? But we all seen that that's not always the case, right? There's often times where they keep you in prison until they can find the evidence. We've seen cases, unfortunately, like Khalif Browder, right? But by the grace of God, he had other plans for me. And fast forward, I had joined the military, and the military started showing me what my capabilities. My true value wasn't tied to money or what other people said, that it was really intrinsic. And I had to learn that because as a youth, it was all about what other people said and other people's perception. I had low self-esteem, low self-confidence. So I learned about those things in the military, and going through my military career, man, it was just like I started feeling different. Like every time I deployed 3 times, and every time I came back, felt a little different, right? And people would be like, yeah, you still got that personality, that bubbliness, but there's something that's changed, right, about you. And it wasn't until my third deployment to Afghanistan, I came back home, man, and it was 2017, around September. I think I came back in like February or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it was like 6 to 8 months later. And I just felt terrible. I mean, I was in the darkest of the darkest depths, man. I had suicidal ideations. I remember calling my sister, my oldest sister, Chandra, and I was like, man, you know what? I apologize for just started rambling. I don't even know what I was saying, bro. To keep it real, I can't even remember what I was saying. I just apologized pretty much for existing. And it was that moment where she's like, you need to get help, right? Because I told her I'm ready to just call it, right? I can't take this. I'm having these terrible nightmares because of what was transpiring over there, overseas. And I finally got therapists, finally got a life coach of my own. And seeing how that helped me, I realized the power in being vulnerable. I realized the power in saying, hey, I'm not okay, right? You can be as strong as you want to be, but even the strongest need that support, right? And I realized that in that moment, bro. And that's really what transformed me into being that mental health advocate and saying like, yo, especially as Black men, we have to get out of that, vulnerability as a weakness and turn it into strength, because it's really the language, how we see words is damaging to our community. We have to understand that we have the power to change the meanings behind words, and we've done it throughout our history, right? We've done it throughout our history, and we can do it again. So vulnerability, mental health, you know um, getting help, all those things that are taboo, that we don't want to talk about or we don't want to admit, we need to open them up.
Man, you said a lot within there. I hope I can. I wanted to write down, but I was like, I was listening. I was in the story with you. So,
Oh, good, man.
I'll try to go back. One of the first things that's coming up is how do you feel about the veterans, like now that you can speak from both perspectives, where you went in and you had certain beliefs about yourself, and then you gain some certain things, and then you come out, and I always wonder about, like, when you see the military guys on the side, on the what do you call that, on the highway or on the street, when you passing by and things like that. And I think about, like, how did you get here after you served for the country, for your country? What do you, now that you're on the outside, like, coming out of it, what do you see, or it could be a barrier that prevents them from getting the help or seeking the help?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question, man. There's a few, right? A lot of those guys come from a different era, right? Where those resources that we have now weren't readily available. You had to literally go search for them, right? They didn't have the reintegration thing. They didn't have the TAP program where they help you with transition assistance, like a year out from your ETS or your expected termination of service. So some of those guys, especially if they came from like the Vietnam era or any of those things, they weren't getting those. Actually, they was getting the opposite. So they were just forgotten. So that's one of the things that happens, where they end up on the side of the road, homeless, getting into alcohol, drugs. It's very easy to go down that path as a vet, because you do feel forgotten and you do feel lost at a time. And if you don't be vulnerable, like I was just talking about earlier, you will continue to go down. There's no up. You will continue to go down because you're not getting the help. And then at a certain point, when you get used to that, right, it's just like any institution, and homelessness is an institution, whether we want to admit it or not. When you get in that life, that's what you know. So now when someone does come to help you, you just be like, hey, I just need some food. I just need to survive the day. I actually like this kind of freedom, right? You start rationalizing and justifying why you're there. So that's another thing. Like, so there's veteran service, homelessness services, but you have to, one, know about it, right? If you don't know about it, you're not going to be able to utilize that. And after years and years of that, you get out of touch with the world. Then some veterans, right, we lean on just negative coping mechanisms with all the things that we've gone through, because it's very different from civilian life. Whether you seen combat, whatever it was, if you had a deployment under your belt, you've changed in some way, shape, or form. And there are some things you just can't discuss with your family members or with whoever it is, your loved ones, because they just won't understand. And then there's some things you just don't kind of want to touch on, if you haven't learned that mental thought process of growth, of growing through my pain and addressing my pain properly and all those things. So there's a lot to that, man. And I really feel like the way to address that, whether it's the drugs, whether it's the suicide, whether it's the homelessness, whatever it is for vets, the way to address it is going to take a very concerted effort. It's going to take not just throwing money at it, but throwing humans at it, right? Literally having a wave of people who care going out and talking to these folks and taking them into like the facilities to get the care, to get cleaned up, to get the jobs, to get the education, to get all these things. And that's what needs to happen, man. But it's hard to do because they have to want to do it. And at a certain point, you just like throwing out your hands.
Wow. And before I go any further on that, thank you for your service and your contribution to for allowing us to live. I really do. I gotta say that every time I'm talking with a vet,
Thank you,
because
man.
you don't
Appreciate
realize that how much impact that has over your livelihood. Um, One more question in that realm of things. You talked about PTSD and different experiences like that. Does when holidays or celebrations or awareness things like Memorial and Veterans Day, do those bring anything up? What comes up? Does anything come up during those days for you?
For sure. Veterans Day is a very trying time typically for me. You know, of course, over the years, I've learned some tools and techniques where I can prepare, and also if it comes, I can cope with it a lot better. But yeah, Veterans Day is actually when there was a suicide bombing on the base I was at, and we were all lined up for a Veterans Day run, right, for a 5K we were going to do, and a suicide bomber detonated, killing some people and then wounding people in a multitude of ways, physically, emotionally, and mentally, right? So getting into that action and just kicking in, and then being a part of the remains cleanup later that night, like literally going out and picking up the remains, cleaning up that site from the explosion, treating the bomber the same way I treated the victims. That's really what got me. It wasn't the explosion or any of that. It was just how I had to treat them. The same, not knowing who I was doing what for, because I didn't feel like he deserved that personally, right? So that what really makes it tough for me around that time. And a lot of vets, they're triggered by certain things. I know my triggers are either the Veterans Day, that coming up that time period. I know if I see like an explosion or something like that on TV, sometimes it makes me feel a certain way. Or if I hear like a certain noise, it may take me back. But I'm conscious of that now, because the thing about PTSD is it's happening in our primitive brain before we can even be cognizant of what's taking place. It happens before we even know that we're reacting. And that's how you know really if it's PTSD or not.
Mm.
Because if it's not PTSD, you're thinking about it. Like you're like, oh shoot, I was scared. I heard that and I got scared. But PTSD is just like a reaction. Whether you hit the ground, whether you think you're back there, whatever it is, man. And mine was, I would think that I was there, right? And then I would think about when I do come about, I think of all the people whose lives. I wonder how those lives of the families changed. I wonder, I used to wonder what I could have done, even though there was nothing I could do. Now I know that, but those are the thought processes that go through your head.
You spoke on something and I don't want to gloss over it, but the fact that you treated the bomber and the victims the same type of way. What kind of mindset does that take to be able to see past the actions of a person and still treat them as if they were the idealistic individual?
I think back in this sense to Viktor Frankl. He wrote The Man's Search for Meaning, and he lost pretty much his whole family in a concentration camp.
Mhm.
And he once said that he felt sorry for the guards, that they had to treat people in that inhumane way. And I had to think about that. And after reading that, that really transformed how I looked at it. I was like, you know what? I don't know why the guy did it. I learned some of his story later on that, he was looking to save his family from the Taliban. They had blackmailed him, all these other things. Or, I learned all that stuff, but at that time I didn't really care. Right. I
Mm.
was like, man, you know, do what you need to do, handle yours, but don't kill other people because of
Mm.
that. But I had to think of that. I had to put myself in the shoes. What would I be willing to do to save my family, right? So that kind of helped me process it a little more over time. Of course, there's still anger, right? Of course, there's still hurt. Of course, there's still pain. But I'm able to transform that into coming from a place of empathy, coming from that place of compassion, and I'm able to say, I don't know what I would have done if it was me. I don't know what I would do if someone put my family in jeopardy. Said, hey, if you don't do this, we're going to kill your mother, your sisters. I don't know what I would do, right? Or if I'm a father, all those things. So you never know what you would be willing to do. So I had to think about that.
Man, and just that's a powerful mindset to have when in the midst of that moment and to reflect on the moment and like what, have some insight. So kudos to you for doing that, because I don't know if I would have had the same empathy, but that's something that you said you get in training and development and things like that. um
It took a
it,
while, man. It didn't come overnight, bro. I'll tell you that much, man. It's really a conscious thing. It's really about being conscious. I spoke earlier about how PTSD happens in the subconscious and the primitive mind, right? It's really about becoming conscious of your thoughts and being able to say, hey, I know, I'm thinking this way. I recognize that. And I want to process that. I don't want to just shove it down. I want to process it and understand why and understand that my feelings are valid. But it does not do me any service, or it does not do the victims any service if I continue to stay there. I cannot stay in the grief because I'm here for a reason. I'm here to make sure that their deaths weren't in vain. I'm here to make sure that people understand you are alive. You can move forward from traumatic events, whatever it is, because you have a purpose. And it's really up for you to find it. And once you find it, that trauma becomes a why. That trauma becomes a propelling mechanism, right? When you don't feel like doing it, you think about that. You say, okay, I remember this happened to me, and I don't want that to happen to anyone else, right? I want to do my part and play my part to make a difference in this world, because I truly inherently believe that most people on this earth are good, and I have so much evidence of that, right? I've traveled around the world, whether it's the United States or overseas or abroad, and I've seen most people are inherently good. And then you have some people who feel like they have no other option. They may not want to really do what they're doing, but they feel like that is the only way. They're in survival state. Survival state ties into the scarcity mindset. When you feel like there's only one way, when it's typically not. Unless someone is a life-threatening situation, there's typically more than another way, but it's really hard to find it. Because when you're in the fight, you're too close. That's why it's the benefit of, every sport has a coach. You're too close to the fight. You're too into the game to be able to see the moves you need to make to counter that opponent, right? And the opponent is the fear. The opponent is the hunger. The opponent is the poverty. The opponent is the pain. And that's how that's where that empathy comes in at. So if we can look at it like that, which is one of the things that I feel like needs to be in more school systems and stuff too, because that empathy, when you see a bad kid, they're labeled as that. You're a bad kid. Right? There's nothing we can do with you, right? You're not intelligent because your grades are bad. Instead of finding out what's happening, right? What happened to that person to get in there, right? That's how we have to start thinking. We cannot automatically assume that and just discount someone, that that's just them. They may be doing it because of survival. And then you have the people who absolutely just are vile, right? There's no other way to say it, right? Something about their chemical makeup has made them, the serial killers, right? The serial rapists, those types of people, right? They absolutely have that. But then we also have to look at the reason. If there was no good, there was no bad, there would be no good, right? So there's a counterbalance to everything. And that's just how the world was designed. Because if we didn't have those things, we wouldn't appreciate the fact that everything was good, right? We would be cold. We will be like, man, what the heck? So it gives you purpose, and it gives you a moral compass to say, hey, I can choose to be good, or I can choose to be bad, right? So you have to have that moral compass, and we have to also realize that there's no real black and white, right? There's a gray area, and we have to start looking at it from that empathetic lens.
Man, you went into my next conversation, and I was going to ask, and more so, because you and I'll use PTSD as an example. Some things with PTSD you can't get coached out of. You need therapy for it. And so you said you was able to get therapy and a life coach. Can you talk about what the difference is of the being on the receiving end of both? Like, what was the difference between the two, and why did you feel you needed to get two forms?
For sure. So therapy typically focus like past behaviors to get you back into the present, right? That's how I always really say in the simplest of terms. And therapists, one thing that's really important is therapists are regulated, right? They have to get that education. They have to do what they need to do, right, in order to be able to serve you. And there's different types of therapy, right? Of course, you have talk therapy, you have music therapy. So that's another thing people who are looking for therapy have to think about. What type? Is it cognitive behavioral therapy? Is it acceptance? What do I need to work on? Is it trauma recognition? Whatever it is. So that's the key for therapy. And then coaching is more so where you are now to where you want to be. And with coaching, we have to understand it's not a regulated field, right? Coaching is something you don't necessarily need, right? You want to get coaching because you want to expedite your success. You want to overcome whatever it is that's in your way, the obstacles, and create that clear plan. But you also have to be careful with coaches because there's no regulation. So that's why I make it a point to get those certifications, get my degrees, because even though credentials don't say your capabilities, I feel like if I'm going to do something, I want to be able to serve my clients the best way possible, right? Because I have the life education, right? I've been through things. I have intuition. But when you compound that with that educational path, now you sky is not the limit, right? now because now I understand it from the theoretical perspective and the applied perspective, right? So that's the difference between a coach and a therapist. So I always tell people, like, if you're looking for a coach, be damn sure they know what they're talking about, right? Before you sign on that dotted line, especially if they don't have a guarantee. With therapists, typically you want to try them out a couple times anyway. Right, because you're not going to be like, boom, yeah, I feel better. Right, therapy is usually a long-term thing. Coaching, you may have that breakthrough like within the first session, right? You may be like, oh wow, I didn't think about it like that. But therapy doesn't work that way. Therapy is a game. It's a long haul game, and you may have to try a couple of them before you find that one. I tried like 3 or 4 before I found one I vibe with. I was like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, so that's a couple of quick ways that you could differentiate the two.
All right, well, I'm gonna pull something up and so that way people could follow you on social media. We're gonna put the link to everything in the notes, but I don't know if you did a presentation or something, but you sparked something in somebody, and it said, if you don't plan your day, someone will plan it for you. Talk about what you meant behind that when you said it.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that in boundary setting, right? And part of boundary setting is owning your time. I'm a big believer in using this thing right here, using that calendar, because if you don't plan your success, you might not get it because you have to be really intentional about where you're putting your energy. If I wake up and I'm always running behind the 8 ball and I'm trying to catch up my whole day, you're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to burn yourself out. You're going to be procrastinating on things that need to get done because you haven't prioritized. You're just going with the wind, going with the flow, right? There's so many things, and stress is the number one killer, right? All these different elements. So you want to make sure you are planning your days. Plan your self-care in your day. Block out that time. Block out the time you need to educate yourself. Block out the time you're going to work on your business. Block out the time you're going to do all the important things in your day. I like to say they are immovable objects. Just like that important meeting that you had that you said you can't miss at work, you can't miss on your success either. So block out that time. Make sure you have that meeting with your destiny on your calendar every day.
Man, that was a good one, but I gotta push back just because I know what the answer you're gonna give, but I gotta offer it to the people because
I love it.
I feel like one of your specialties is business and entrepreneurship, correct? So even that quote came from that. But I feel like with capitalism, entrepreneurship, it has a hustle mentality where you got to get up, you got to go get it, you got to get out there and work. And early bird gets the worm, all of those different little sayings, but they all lead to burnout. And so how do you coach people into balancing both, like scheduling your meeting with destiny, but also, hey, you got to put the work in, you got to pound the pavement, you got to make them calls, you got to do these different things to be successful.
Well, that's the benefit of the calendar, bro, because when you plan those things, you know exactly when you're going to make those calls. You know exactly when you're going to work on your marketing plan. You know exactly when you're going to schedule your social media calendar. You know, when you know exactly when you're going to do those things, it makes success so much easier. Because if you're just doing it by the seat of your pants, you don't have no direction. You're just like, oh, I need to do this. Oh, shiny object syndrome. Oh, I'm over here now. And you never complete anything. And we know that multitasking actually reduces your productivity by at least 41%. So when we're bouncing all around, we never get anything done. And that's one of the things I work with my clients on, because you have too many goals, and they're not really goals. They're to-do lists, checklists. And most of them aren't moving the needle forward on your success. Most of them just make you feel good. Oh, I responded to, I cleared my inbox. So, so what? All right. Doesn't pass the so what test, right? What are your revenue generating activities? And revenue can be two things, time or money. I work for time, right? The Elon Musk of the world work for time. The Jeff Bezos of the world work for time. Money is not the revenue that people who are high achievers, people who are really change makers work for. And that's where that hustle mentality came from. When you equate dollars, your time to dollars, you already fail. That same time as money is absolutely false. Time is time and money is money. And we have to look at it as such. Money you can generate. It's a resource that you can get back. Time you cannot. So if you're not intentional with that time, you're going to go 10 years down the road and be like, I remember when I was trying to build this business and it failed. Right? And you're going to look back at why, because I never was intentional. Right? I never put the time into the direct things that really move the needle forward. So you really have to identify, take the time, like especially marketing, especially knowing who you're messaging to. If you don't know who you're talking to, your business is going to fail automatically. Right. So you want to put the proper time into those key revenue generating activities before you do anything else. Social media is cool, but it's not marketing. So you have to understand that, right? When you do social media, are you doing it just to say I'm consistent, just because I want a presence? Or are you doing it because you know exactly who you're targeting and you're running it smartly? So those are things you have to put the time in to think about and plan. I write all the time. I have thousands of notebooks, thousands of Post-it notes, because it's all a part of the plan. Everything I do, I want to be intentional about. I want to be lazy, and that's how we should be, right? I want systems, I want automations, I want all these things to make success flow with me. You talk about, you hear feng shui, right? Having things flow, right? Having things flow in your life. And that's just how we want success. We want success. We want our day. If we journal, I want that journal next to on my nightstand when I wake up. Or if I journal before work, I want it on my work desk. So that's the things we want to think about. Save time on those little easy ways, easy steps, and then plan your day. And I guarantee you, you're going to at least 10x your productivity. And then on your day before you log off that first day or that day you're working on, write down what you need to work on the next day. That way you already know. It's all about making sure you know exactly what to do. That way, if you do get sidetracked, say your kid gets sick and you like, oh, I can't work today. I got to go pick him up. I got to do this. You say, okay, I can't work, but maybe I can do this one thing, that top priority, knock it out. And if you could do that each day, 1% each day, makes you how much more better, right?
365%.
Exactly. So that's really what it's about, man. It's not about what you can get done in the short term. It's about the long term. In the long term of planning your time and being intentional and making sure you block out all those things is the fact that you are 365 times better than you were when you started the year out.
That's a fact, man. And I was just talking to somebody the other day about being bored. I'm like, I haven't been bored in a long time, like, because it's always something to do. It's always something you could be doing. And it was like, wait, people are still bored. And that's when I realized the separation of like why people are successful, and because they're not managing, like you said, their time in a productive manner where they can utilize it to cover a lot of areas.
Yeah. And also you made a point, like, when you want to rest, have that time. Like, make sure you intentional about that too, because that we talked about overwhelming burnout. If you're not intentional about your rest periods, like, hey, Sunday is rest day, whatever it is, then you start the cloud. You forget, you put work into life, and now there's a blur there. We don't want that. You want separation of duties, right? I'm at work when I'm here, and I'm in life when I'm here. Be present everywhere you are. So that way you can get that focus in. And if you focus and you get into that state of flow where things just seem to be clicking, man, you'll be surprised how much you get done. It's Parkinson's law, man. Like, a lot of us, we be like, oh, shoot, I have 5 months before I got to write this speech, right? 2 weeks out, we're like, damn, I still ain't write that speech. We cramming it down. We like, oh, I did a pretty good job. And we think that procrastination is our best form, right? Our best form of productivity. But it really is Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law states that you're going to put the work in the amount of time you have to get it done, right? So if you give yourself a focus block of 2 hours to maybe get, a quarter of the speech done, say I'm going to write 5 paragraphs or whatever you're going to do in those 2 hours. Now you know exactly what you're going to do. That's your Parkinson's law. You shortened it. So, oh, look,
I'm with you, man.
So,
I'm with you. I'm with you. Because I think it's something that you're so right about, and again, being a coach, like that's I think people need to hear that, because they get mentally drained and get overwhelmed. And actually, that's what I wanted you to talk about next too, was the difference between just having a to-do list and a goal, like just having a bunch of tasks without the goal. Because I just now like transforming into knowing the difference when you actually write a goal down of like I said, I wanted a certain amount of LinkedIn friends and for the year, and being specific about it. And I'm sure you'll get into it. And then I was like, all right, well, what does that amount look like every week? And then what does that amount look like every day? Like really breaking down that goal into something that's bite-sized, so that way at the end of it. But I just started doing that for a lot of goals. And it actually, even right now, I'm in the gym, and instead of me trying to get a vacation body, it was like, you know what, I'm gonna do a lifestyle change, and I'm not looking for a certain body in 2 months. I'm looking for it in next year, like planning it out so that way I give myself enough time to get to the goal that I want to get to. But I wanted you to speak to more towards that.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. You're hitting it spot on. And goals are something like you have to know yourself, the type of person you are, because some people are fearful of long-term goals. Like they just don't set them because they're like, oh man, well, this can change this. Their mind just goes everywhere. So if you know that you're that type of person, start with some short-term, maybe a year, start with where you are, understand the type of person you are. But then once you understand that, set whatever the long-term goal is. If it's 6 months, a year, whatever it is for you, as far out as you can set it. And I only set 3 goals for my long terms, 3 big goals that stretch me, and you mentioned a point, making sure it's specific. You know exactly what you're looking to do. It's measurable, by what time, so you know how on track you are, right? You want to make sure you have those milestones that you were just talking about, those smaller goals that lead up to it, and then you want it to be attainable, actionable, whatever you want to put the A to B. Can it be done, right? Can it be done? Can you do it right now, or what do you need to do? Relevant to who you are, the life you want to live. If you just saying a goal because someone else told you or you've seen it on social media, you're not going to get it. You're not going to hit that goal because it doesn't align with who you are. The goal has to align with your values. If it doesn't align with your values, it's going to drain you. You're not going to enjoy the journey. And that's another key to a goal. We have to understand that it's a journey, right? It's not just going to happen overnight. We got to stop expecting and start aspiring, right? And then time-based is the T. When it's time-based, we're going to put exactly how long, like you mentioned the gym, the lifestyle. So you have something called a distal goal, which is the far out goal. It's just going to keep trying to hit it. That's your lifestyle goal. When you do a lifestyle goal, it's very broad. When you say like, hey, I want to live a fit, healthy life, that's a distal goal. It's very broad. What that means can be very ambiguous. You don't really know. You just know that you're going to eat right. You're going to work out, right? Something like that. But then when you break that down and reverse engineer it, bring it back to a lower scale, that's when you get to the shorter term goals. When you say, hey, I want to lose 10 pounds in 30 days, right? Whatever it is. I want to lose 10 pounds in 30 days, and I'm going to do that. You always want to say, I'm going to do that by hitting the gym 3 times a week at whatever time you're going to do it. Be very, 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 very specific. That's going to help you stick to it. And then again, hit that calendar, put it on the calendar, block that time out. And when you do a goal, those goals, you're going to have goals that really stretch you out, that really you're like, man, like for me with my business, when I first started, I was like, all right, I want to hit 6 figures. I want to hit $100,000 in revenue, not profit, in revenue. I want to hit $100,000 in the next year. That was my goal. Right. And it stretched me because here I was building the business and I'm trying to learn everything I need to learn, put in the systems and all that other stuff. And I didn't hit it. Right. I didn't hit it that first year, and that was fine because I aspired to hit that goal. Right. I knew that it was going to be a work. It stretched me and it pushed me to be better. But guess what? That progress put me in place where year 2, I'm crushing it. Right. So that's what we have to remember. Like, that journey, yeah, you might not hit that goal that stretches you, that one big goal, right? That you made really specific. But the journey that you took, those milestones you hit along the way, because you should be setting those, right? Like, so it could be a milestone, it could be in quarter one, I want to have $25,000 worth of revenue. Maybe I'll get even more specific. I'll say, 10,000 of this is from my online courses, 15,000 comes from having 5 clients, whatever the case may be. But how that goal looks, you should always have those key things, the SMART goal, and break it out. And then understand that the proximal goal, the short-term goals, should be feeding into your larger goals. So that's why I always like to look to the distance, if you can, to make those first, because your smaller ones, your closer ones should be feeding into that. Because the 3 are your values. Those are who you are, who you want to be, right? Because we're not thinking about who we are now or the life we're living now. We're thinking about who we want to be and the life we want to be living. And that's why goals should drive you. And those milestones also help keep you on track as you go. As you know, like when you was like, okay, I'm gonna work out, then you had to break it back. And it keeps you on track, because when you hit it, like, yeah, I'm good. Right? So
yeah, and honestly, is what you said, like it's learning it over time and developing that system for yourself. Because I had them large goals of like, I'm gonna hit 100,000, 100 bands this year. Excuse me. I'm gonna hit the $100,000. I'm like, and mind you, this was years ago. And I'm like, you don't have a skill set or nothing to know how you get into that number, but yet alone you think you're gonna hit that number. So now, or when I was starting out, I had to find what skill sets could help me reach that number before I can say, because then I can focus on the skill sets as opposed to just trying to reach for that number. And I think, like you said, with those goals being closer to you.
And that's the key. Like, that's why that A is so important, man. It's actionable or attainable, right? Because that's where you start thinking about, do I have the resources? Do I need to reach out to some more people, collaborate with folks? Like, how am I going to do? That's where you're thinking about really the how. How do I make this specific, goal, this measurable goal actionable, make it realistic, make it where I can actually do this thing. So that's where you want to think about all that stuff, because if you don't have it, now you have some more goals you can hit. Like for you were saying the skills, that could be a milestone. Like, all right, so maybe I need to, when initially you said a year, maybe you're like, okay, maybe I need a year and a half because I need to spend 6 months on this. And it's okay to move it, right? It's not set in stone when you do that, but make sure you're not moving it just because. Make sure it moved because of something that transpired. You realize something along the way, like, okay, I might not hit this now, but I'm going to do 3 months, because by 3 months, based on my projections, I should be able to hit this now, because I have the skills, I got with the people I need to get with, right? I've done the work, and I have my milestones, and it looks like I'm going to hit it in this time. So just don't move goals just because you're lazy, right? Just because you don't feel like it. So we have to be mindful of that. And one of the things along with goals, when we talked about just setting the check marks, making you feel good, that's busy work. You don't want to be busy. You want to be purposeful. Right? You want to make sure. That's why I said be intentional with your time, because that inbox, most of that stuff is junk. No one cares. All right. I like to say, rocks, pebbles, and sand tasks. So your sand task is that most of that checklist that just make you feel good. Oh, I cleared my inbox. Oh, I wrote down 5 things that I felt like wanted to do, or, oh, I responded back to that person who I know is not going to be a client, whatever the case may be. Those are sand tasks. Those are things you could pass off. Right? If you really want to get them done, delegate it. Right? Get you a virtual assistant or something like that. Right? You can get them for not too much money if that's what you want to do, or find someone else who you can delegate that task to if you really want to get it done. The pebbles task is they need to get done, but not immediately. They haven't yet hit the rock level, right? So they're important for you to move the needle forward, whatever your goal is. So that would be like, for instance, maybe if you want to get in shape, you might need to buy some workout clothes and some new sneakers. But you might have some sneakers that have a little bit of tread left on them, so you can still run, but you're not quite there yet. So that would be the pebble task, and then the rock task is absolutely, I need to do this now. And that's when your 3 goals come into play, right? Those rock tasks are your revenue generating activities. What do I need to do to make this goal a success, to be able to hit this goal? And that's what you want to do in your rock level. So if you stick into the workouts, you might either, I need to sign up for a gym, I need to go find a park, I need to find a place where I'm going to work out, or what type of workouts I want to do, stuff like that. And then you want to, if you know you're not going to stick to it, maybe you need to get that trainer, right? That's going to help you stick to the goal, get some accountability. So things like that. That's what you want to make sure you're building upon when you're setting these goals.
Man, and you gave a whole coaching session that I want y'all to know this he's gonna charge for this on any other place. So please take advantage of these free gems that he's dropping. But I want to talk about owning your kingdom. What made you come up with it? What's the thought behind it? Talk to me about it.
Yeah, so own your kingdom. The kingdom is a triad of things. The kingdom is you. And there's three things when we talk about, and this goes in business and in life, right? So you have the physical, the mental, and the spiritual, right? And when we talk about spiritual, it's really aligned with whatever higher power you need. Just if there's something you have to believe in, whatever. And I don't want to give people what they need to believe in, because that's not me, but you have to believe in something. And that's going to drive you. That helps your guidance. And that triad, physical, mental, and spiritual, like physical could be tired. If you're fatigued, when you feel that overwhelm, that physical level starts to go down, and then it affects your mental capacity. You can't think as quickly. Your ideas aren't coming as well, right? And then the spiritual thing, if you don't have that belief, it can help your belief wane in yourself as well, in the belief that things can take place, right? So that's why those three are important, and they tug on each other. So we want focus. We want everything to be centered in a line, because when you're in the middle and you're centered, now you can focus. You have that laser focus on what you're trying to attain, what your purpose is, how you're going to get it. Things just flow clearly. So when I talk about owning your kingdom, it's overcoming that overwhelm, building up the self-confidence, getting the emotional intelligence to speak to people properly, to understand your own feelings and emotions, to be able to process those, to be able to listen, to understand, not respond, self-mastery, right? Self-responsibility, self-accountability. It's a lot of self in there. But then there's the component of me, right? And the other people that would be in the program if you're doing group coaching, right? We are also an extension of that. Now you can reach out to us and process those ideas you have. Talk about the obstacles you're facing, all those things, so you can expedite the success. But first, it all starts with you, because you have to decide that you want the help. You have to decide that you're going to take the action and do the work, because there's a couple of questions I'm going to ask you when you come to me, right? and a lot of people feel like they're ready. You're right, but they're not ready. And when we talk about investment, again, it's not money. It's not money. It's the investing the energy, because it takes energy. Success does not just come to you. You got to go get it, right? But my job in this program is to make sure we create the action plan. Like I said, I want it to flow easy for you. So I want to get you over that overwhelm, get you over those humps, whatever it is. And we're going to find the root cause. We're not doing surface level stuff, right? Because what I've noticed in my time in this business is people come to you. They'll say like, oh, it's me. What's stopping you? Oh, it's me. Okay, what does that mean? How? How is it you? Right? And I have this thing where I do 5 whys. I ask you the same thing. Why? 5 times, literally. That typically is what it is, because it causes you to go deeper. And you go into this introspection where it's like, wow, now I got to really think about this. And that's one of the exercises I did when I first started this thing, because any success, to sustain it, you have to have some love for that thing, or else it's not success, right? You could be the richest man in the world, the richest woman in the world, but if that was not what you love, that is not why you were doing it in the first place, or you lose sight of why you did it, now there's no joy in it, right? You're just doing it just because. So we have to make sure that we stay on task and understand that you don't have to be married to what you started to in the first place. So those are things that
I hold on to it.
Yeah. And it's really about, I have this concept of 360 support. So that came from, in the military, we talk about 360 security. We put a perimeter around the asset is in the middle. We can see no matter where something comes from, we can see it up, down, around, doesn't matter. We're going to see it coming, right? And we can engage. So 360 support is a similar concept. It's where we identify who you have in your life, that you can lean on for inspiration, for education, for accountability, for challenging you, for really getting you to be the best person you can be. When you don't feel like you believe in yourself, to be able to lift you up and guide. So of course you have us, the people in the community of the kingdom, but you also need people who are closest to you, your friends, your family, right? Who you can talk to about these things, your therapist, all those types of things. We want to make sure you have a solid community so you continue this. Because when you're out of the program, you're still a part of the family, right? You're still in the groups, you're still in the forums. I don't just kick people out, and that's the important thing. Because a lot of these programs, they be like, "Oh, your 12 weeks is up, you're done. You're out of it." Now, I still want you to be able to communicate. Like once you're in that group, I want you to still be able to get that value, because that's what it's really all about. It's about serving. It's about serving, and I'm serving because I know how I felt to feel hopeless and helpless, and I don't want people to feel that way.
As we begin to close out, I got one question that I wanted to get across, and you know it. I just wanted to hear like what's the concept behind it. What does the term "live not loaf" mean to you?
Oh man, that I named this company that because it represents the transformation. So loathe, a lot of people are like, what the hell is loathe? like, what is that? Why did you use that word? And I used this purposefully because that's another one of those words I wanted to change it, right? I wanted people to become comfortable with it so they know that that's what they're doing, right? And loathing is when you just have no love anymore. You don't have any joy. You're tired of the same mundane thing. You're tired of struggling, just tired of life that you're living. Right. And you just lose all focus and you just feel like blah. Right. You're like, man, I just want to fast forward this life right now. Like, that's literally how people feel. Like, I just want to fast forward this life, man. I don't even care no more. And then everything else bad starts happening. And now you have confirmation bias and you're like, see, nothing goes right for me.
Exactly what I was talking about.
Perpetual cycle, right? So I want people to live, not just be breathing, not just be, have life in their body, but literally have agency over their lives. Literally understand that they can change their circumstances and they can get success in perpetuity. They can create that, but they have to put in the work. They have to be vibrant. They have to have, really get their purpose right. They have to have goals. They have to have a zest for life. That's what I want for people. I want people to go for what their definition of success is, what they enjoy. It's cool to live for others, right? Yeah, that's great. But you have to live for you, right? You have to live for you. It's not selfish. You are if you talk about, for instance, if you care for some people, right? If you're a caregiver, they won't have that care if you're not there. So we talking about the overwhelm, the stress, and all that stuff. You got to understand when you need to take that step back and just tell somebody like, yo, I need you to handle that, right? That's living. Living is doing things you enjoy and making sure you're checking your own meter, check your own engine light, right? Make sure you get your service, right? So I want people to do that, man, and people to just really enjoy life again, because life is beautiful. Life is beautiful. No matter, how I know life can be hard and stuff, but use that temporary pain and temporary discomfort to create that permanent gain, man. And it's possible. We can all live, not loathe.
I got really one question, and it came back to what you started off talking about, being 17 in a courtroom and you having that inspirational moment from God giving you that break. The question is, what would you, now being who you are today, tell that young man as he exited the courtroom? Like, what would you tell him about, like, just what you know now from experience and learning and gaining everything that you gained? What would you want to tell him?
I would tell him life has just begun. It's game time now. I would tell him that, that experience was meant to let you know that that was not your path. Your path is meant for something more. And I know you still feel lost. I know you don't know what that means right now, but search within yourself and understand that you are powerful. You are super unique. You are one of one. And that means no one can do what you can do. And that is priceless.
On that note, share this episode with somebody. Let them know everything that he shared in this episode, as well as all the work that he has going on and the information that he's giving out, because there's so many gems and jewels. And I can only imagine, if this is what he's giving for free, imagine what you get when you pay for it. So
Yes,
please
indeed.
go ahead and share this with somebody. Leave a review on Apple, letting them know, like, what quote stood out for you that he left, what's something that impacted you. Leave a quote on Apple podcast. It'll help with, spreading his message and spreading these episodes. And that note, remember to subscribe, and remember, as always, that this platform has never been about being a replacement to therapy. It's an alternative place where people share therapeutic stories. Thank you for listening.